Hello and welcome to Wayports Racing League Season 3 round number 8 at Blackwood GP Reversed. I'm Peter Butcher, you're watching Division 1 of Wayports in Live for Speed, and I'm joined today by Travis Mellinger in the commentary box. Travis, slight delay here getting going with some technical issues, but we are back and we are ready to go for round number 8.
We are back. Got it sorted with some expert help from Mo. He does a lot of things for us, to include audio troubleshooting, so we appreciate him being on solving that for us today and being our eyes and ears in the background. I think this will be pretty exciting. Looking at the top of the qualifying order, Mariano at the top like we typically expect. Andy not far behind in third, with Ian putting on a pretty good show in second position. So shaking it up a little bit today. I think this will be fun.
Yeah, there we see the results from the qualifying session that just happened before. It was Mariano on pole with Ian in second and Andy down in third. So that is a shake-up from things we usually see here in Wayports Racing League. We have Ian in second place. That's pretty exciting, Travis.
It is, yeah. Don't typically see him there. Usually see him in about third or fourth. Andy not too far off, but yeah, Mariano classes the field as usual. As we look down the rest of the order, Santiago, Andy's teammate there in fourth. They want to finish as high as possible because Mariano and the McLean Library have a pretty healthy lead in both championships, the individual standings and in the team standings. Speaking of, we can see the Drivers' Championship right here. We've got Mariano at the top, one win worth of points clear of Andy in second position. Then Andy's teammate Santiago in third. Valentina driving for McLean Library, Mariano's teammate, in fourth position with 69 points. Wellington, who is not here today, not too far behind Valentina on 67 points. I think he would have liked to haul some points here today because he's not too far behind the fourth position in the championship. But alas, it's not meant to be. Ian starting second today in sixth. And then we've got Arthur for the Atrium team in seventh, Eduardo down there in eighth, and Alex, the relative newcomer to the series, rounding out the order in ninth position.
Yes, and over in the Teams Championship, it is the McLean Library leading from Vertex, Quantum in third, Lillian fourth, Atrium fifth, and Step Up with a few more points thanks to Arthur last round, picking up a few more points. Sorry, not Arthur, Alex for Step Up, grabbing a few more points for that team. We're almost ready to go for the race here, Travis, so let's have a quick look at the track that we're all familiar with by now, Blackwood GP, in the reverse direction. 3.3 kilometers, 2.1 miles, with a 27-lap race and a mandatory pit stop coming right your way. Travis, without any further ado, I think it is time to hit the track.
Yep, they are coming to the grid now. There we go. The grid is set. We can see Mariano on the right there in pole position. He'll have Ian alongside with Andy directly behind him. He's accustomed to having Andy right there, so Andy should be able to get the slipstream going into the first corner. It's a tricky downhill corner, and then on the brakes going downhill, and then a right turn with some treacherous curbs. But Mariano has a clear start ahead of Ian. Ian's going to tuck in behind. He may have Andy there to contend with, but he's got a little bit of room. Andy's going to try to go around the outside. This is a difficult pass, but there's lots of runoff on the outside. Ian's still holding that position. Andy may have to settle for third. Everybody cleanly through the first turn as Mariano leads them into the second. Ian in second position. Andy in third with Santiago right behind in fourth. Valentina in fifth position running behind them. And then further back in the order, still running cleanly behind Valentina, Eduardo, Alex, and Arthur at the back. Alex managed to get by Arthur on the start as we come through this sequence of bends before we drive onto the very long back straight. Pete, the last time we were here going the opposite direction, Mariano, I recall it was either Mariano or Andy, one of them had a very short top gear and was bumping into the limiter at the very end. Hearing in my ear that it was Mariano. Wondering if we'll see more of the same today or if he's got that sorted out for this event.
Yeah, absolutely. As they're side by side down the back straight. And yeah, absolutely nothing between these two right now.
Yeah, he's not on the limiter, so going uphill will make that would mitigate that somewhat. But apparently he's got the gears sorted as well. As Ian goes very wide through the chicane, it's really easy to do that. He's got to be careful over that sausage curb. Going to lose 2 positions at least, maybe 3, as he bangs doors with Eduardo. Oh, that sends Eduardo right into the attenuator there at the end of the pit lane entry. Oh no, that's a disaster for Eduardo. It was a near disaster for Ian. He manages to get away with it, falls back to 5th position, but that sends Eduardo to the back. I think he was running pretty cleanly, and then had a chance to take a position on the mistake of a competitor, and then all went wrong.
Yeah, it looks like we have a pretty interesting race on our hands. Mariano, again, with exactly what he needs to be doing at the front. A very healthy lead over Andy for Vertex in second place. And then we have Santiago for Vertex, his teammate, in third. And Ian having just not a fantastic start.
No, really not. I think he started really. I think he probably surprised a little bit to find himself in the second position after qualifying ahead of Andy, who's normally pretty quick. Who, speaking of, he and his teammate just go off in the grass there and bump the barriers. Yeah, Ian had it sorted in qualifying and looked strong through the first part of the lap, and then it's really easy to get this chicane wrong because you're approaching. It's a pretty fast chicane, and you approach it at top speed. So kind of difficult to get the car slowed down enough and judge the speed through the chicane because you can carry a fair amount of speed through there. It's not a slow chicane by any means. But if you get one part of it wrong, it all goes wrong. And there's no runoff when you come through this part of the chicane right here. If you're going too quick, you're over a sausage curb and into the barriers. It's easy to suffer particularly bad consequences if you get that out of order.
Yes, apologies for the lack of audio for the first couple of laps. We were experiencing some difficulty with audio before the stream, and we are back with everything now. So, lap number 3, we're watching Santiago coming up the hill as Andy takes the fastest lap of the race. And yeah, we have the top 2 back where we expect them to be. And this time, Andy has a 2.7 second gap to bring down. Yeah, we are hoping that Andy can find that pace that we're used to seeing from him and close that gap down towards the end of this race so that we have a fight continuing into the final 2 rounds of the championship. Mariano has such a huge lead in the championship now that Andy cannot afford any more slip-ups, Travis.
No, he can't. And we know he can go that quickly. We've seen him run really well at the front. Not necessarily. I mean, he's been at the front on account of Mariano's mistakes in earlier events, but he's definitely been up there on pace. He's closed the gap a little bit through the first half of this lap. He's got it down to 2.7 seconds. So he's found a 10th. In earlier events, in the more recent events, he's lost a lot of that pace on car damage. I think he struggled a little bit last week at Blackwood Rallycross, but otherwise, he's kind of struggled with pace after he's made mistakes or done something to the car, and he's looking a little bit better today. So, yeah, hopefully he can settle in. We know he had been traveling for earlier events and took his gear with him. Now he's home. Should be in a familiar setting. Hopefully, I agree. Hopefully, he can do something today and fight with Mariano at the front.
Mariano charges over the hill down the other side to take the start of lap number 4, a 2.8 second lead now over Andy. As we have some changes for position in the background, we've got Arthur and Eduardo going for it in the back, and Eduardo actually gets that position back from Arthur. Ian, he'll be asking some questions of himself. He's still in this race for sure. He has the pace. He's obviously shown that in qualifying. And he has 27 laps in this race, Travis, to try and get that place back. He's pretty close to Santiago, so a podium not out of the question here.
No, it's really not. I think he can match Santiago pretty easily. We could see him visibly closing that gap just in the last few corners. Santiago had that win at the Aston Cadet Circuit, and he's been pretty quiet since then. So running in the front half. Speaking of front half of his car goes off in the tire barrier there. That'll make it a little easier for Ian. Should have the slipstream here. Yeah, he had kind of a surprise win at Aston Cadet. Andy couldn't match him enough to fight for him, so they chose to go around, in order and take a 1-2 and valuable points. But since then, Santiago's, he's been on the podium or a little bit further back, but we haven't seen the moment of clarity that we saw out of him at Aston Cadet. Hopefully, we can see some more of that before the season's over. Heads up driving by Ian there. Santiago got it. We talked a few minutes ago about how it's really easy to get the chicane wrong, and Santiago went a little bit wide, got over the sausage curb, and bounced the car back onto the circuit. Ian, wise to that, jumped on the brakes and gave him plenty of room, and then took the position going down into the hairpin. Ian back in a podium position after an early mistake dropped him from second all the way to fifth. Looking pretty good for him.
Yeah, it's looking pretty like everything's going very well at the front of the race for those two. As yes, Ian makes his way through on Santiago. Travis, we've seen some ebbing and flowing of drivers throughout the season, and Ian is certainly coming off a bit of momentum of with his recent results.
Yeah, so he had the podium last week. He was awfully happy with that. He's been consistently near third or fourth position. Finally broke through and got that podium position last week. But he has been, you're right, he has been up and down. You know, he makes a few mistakes here and there, falls back to fifth or sixth, works his way back up the order. But other than this early mistake, looking pretty strong today. He has consistent momentum toward the front of the pack.
Yeah, it's really nice to see as we look back and see that the gap actually between Ian and Santiago is growing. Yeah, that's really positive to see. At the front, meanwhile, Mariano is gradually opening up that gap. It's gone up by about 3 or 4 tenths over the last couple of laps, which is you know, not as much of a domination as we saw in the last round, especially. So good stuff.
No, it's not. Mariano was completely dominant last week on the dirt.
Andy.
Yep. Andy's no slouch, though. I think he's a little more familiar with tarmac than he is running around on dirt, though that won't help. Taking a helping of dirt this week, though he doesn't really have to. Yeah, he has the pace, and we've seen this gap kind of ebb and flow at the front. It's been down to 2.5 seconds in the last couple laps. Now it was up over 3 at the line. Andy made up a little bit of time. He'll have lost it going wide through turn 1. He just needs to be a little bit more consistent. Mariano is the class of the field. He is the quickest generally he's the quickest at the very front, but he's not perfect. And if Andy can be just a little bit better, a little bit more consistent, hit the marks every single time and not make these small mistakes, he would be right there.
Yeah, he is still within touching distance. He has some momentum now. He just needs to calm down. As we see in the background, Santiago hitting the wall again. This is not good for his race, potentially falling into the clutches of Valentina, who, it has to be said, Travis, we've not really seen much from Valentina in the last few rounds. Always a driver who's there or thereabouts, but in the last few rounds, not really appearing on our radar at the front. But today, if Santiago keeps doing this, then Valentina is going to be right there for the podium hunt.
Yeah, she doesn't have the outright pace that her teammate does, though. Nobody does, bar Andy. But she is really consistent. We tend to see her right here in 4th or 5th position. She gets around the track safely, mostly stays out of trouble. She is a mainstay of the middle of the pack without too much drama. And when you're a racing driver, as we cut to Alex, who just stopped in the pits, appeared to take some repairs. We'll see him off again in just a second. Yeah, she runs clean, consistent races, no drama. Racing drivers don't like drama. They want to run a race without any mishaps or any excitement, and she does that. She delivers good points haul for the team consistently with Mariano running at the front. She's doing a good supporting role for the McLean Library team.
Yeah, I agree. You've got to have a teammate who finishes consistently in the points. And while it might not be on the podium of late, Valentina certainly has been putting in those points finishes, which is all you need, especially when, the Vertex team, for example, they're worrying whether both drivers are going to make it to each round at the moment. Having a DNF in your team is not good for your team's championship. As we watch Mariano heading up the hill on lap 7 of this race, he's going to hit the chicane very soon in the reverse direction, the direction we're not as familiar as seeing this taken. 1 apex, 2 apexes, and then up over the final one, avoiding that big sausage curb, because if you hit that, well, it's very easily to roll the car into the bushes on the right hand side. Bit of a drift out of that corner for Mariano, and not as wide a line as he would normally take to straighten his exit as much as possible, but it's enough. He currently has a 4.6 second lead, so Andy's made a bit of a mistake, I think, on this lap.
Yeah, he has. That was when they came through the timing line on the back straight. That was 3 and change seconds. So Andy made a mistake somewhere, probably in the chicane. Seems the most likely. We didn't see it, but I would guess that's where it was. Mariano extending that lead. We talked about how Andy needs to avoid the smaller mistakes that add up, and thus far he has not done that. Mariano looking dominant once again at the front and extending a pretty comfortable, nearly 5-second lead now. I think this will be good news for Ian. Ian is about 9 seconds, 8.5 seconds clear of Andy in third position. As car rolls in the background. That's Santiago. Went way too quick into the second corner. I don't know if he hit a curb there or if he just got it all right. It looked like he was rolling before he got into the barrier, so not entirely sure how he pulled that off. I believe there is a sausage curb on the inside of that corner, so I suppose he could have touched it and rolled the car.
Yeah, I think the car was already damaged, such that if he hit the curb in the right way, it would have been more easy to roll. So, what was I saying about Valentina before? If she just keeps doing laps, then potentially she should have a position. And now, not only does she have a position, but she has 8 seconds gap back to Santiago.
Yep, that's all it takes you win races on pace and occasionally some good luck, and you win championships on consistency. And there she is, consistent, taking opportunities as they come and avoiding mistakes. They're in fourth and demoting Santiago to fifth. I think we heard in our ear as we were calling that the rear of the car was bent in a little bit. It looked like he did the same thing that happened to Wellington a couple weeks ago at West Hill, where he had effectively become a 3-wheeled car and tried to turn into the corner without any support for the weight transferring to the right side, and off it went. Helped a little bit by the curb, so he'll want to avoid doing that again. These drivers are free to reset. There's no rule that says that they can't reset. So when they experience damage, it would be prudent for them to park the car somewhere and reset it, or do a reset when they come in for their pit stop if the damage isn't too debilitating, though we typically don't see that, Pete.
No, absolutely right. As yet again, we see a familiar sight at the front of Wayports. Mariano is driving away again. He's opened up that gap to 5 and a bit seconds. This is quite a show we are seeing here. Andy hasn't had any bad luck so far in this race. He is accustomed to getting a little bit of that from time to time, but right now there is nothing to be said against Mariano. He is putting in exactly the masterclass that he needs to once again, and the driver that is closest to challenging him at the moment in the series has nothing to say just now.
No, he really doesn't. And in fact, you said that he's not had any bad luck. It's all on Mariano's pace. But I would say he's had a bit of good luck. Ian started ahead of him, and then Ian, very graciously moved out of the way for him to set off in pursuit of Mariano, all on his own with a pretty healthy gap behind. But he's just not been able to close that gap. We saw it, kind of come and go a little bit, a few tenths here and there in the opening laps. But now Mariano has found a rhythm and is pulling away a few tenths at a time. And Andy giving away a few more here and there with small mistakes. Ian is not going away in third position. That gap is pretty steady. I think it's come down ever so slightly. Well, no, still about 8.5 seconds. So Ian, I think Ian's probably hungry for this second position. He got it in qualifying, would have wanted to keep it, had the pace to run with Andy, and then made a mistake in the opening laps. I think Ian's the one to keep an eye on in this event. Maybe, with Andy making small mistakes here and there, if Ian can be consistent, he might have a fight for second position.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything is possible. Ian is safe behind. I think, opening up a gap of almost 15 seconds, or over 15 seconds now, over Valentina is a marker to say that, Ian is on pace. Ian is a contender for more and more podiums now, and this is great to see as we ride on board with Mariano. There's a couple of cars ahead doing some confusing things. One of them's going to the pit lane. That was Arthur pulling into the pits. This is Alex with a very damaged car ahead in the step-up car. Hopefully Mariano can negotiate these guys without any issue. As these drivers gain more and more experience in the series, they become better at yielding to what we use a blue flag to indicate that there is a leader coming through, as Alex takes a bit of an excursion, and hopefully doesn't cause any issues, and does.
Oh, I was just about to interrupt and say, sorry, Pete, that'll be a nervous moment for Mariano, where Alex went, off on the right there and basically cut off the first turn. There's that big downhill sweeping bend. Mariano had to jump on the brakes to get out of the way and avoid getting punted off, and that has put Andy right on Mariano's bumper. I think Andy will be thrilled to have this gift. Mariano will be sick that the back marker didn't get out of the way, as Andy's gonna bang doors a little bit. They make a bit of contact, letting Mariano know he's there and he means business. Just like that, Pete, we have a race on our hands once again.
Yeah, I somewhat jinxed that, didn't I? Sorry, Mariano, but there we go. That sometimes is what happens if back markers are lacking some awareness at some points. But there we are. Andy with the best chance he's had all race, but he's let Mariano slip away. That was an opportunistic move into the second chicane. Andy was on the outside when he went for that move, hoping to be on the inside, but there just wasn't enough overlap, was there, Travis? And a move like that just can't work at that corner.
No, he left it way late. That was optimistic at best, as you put it. I guess you can throw a dummy there and try to get the driver ahead to make a mistake, but if you go too deep, as Mariano jumps into the pits, I don't know that I would have done this, Pete. That's going to cost him a little bit of time. Andy's got tires that are in perfect nick. He's got fuel level appropriate to run most of the rest of the race. I guess Mariano thinks that he can go quicker by coming in now and maybe getting clear air and not worry about running with Andy.
Well, this is the thing, Travis. Is he going to get clear air? He's got so many cars behind him. I think he's definitely going to come out behind Ian. There we go. Ian goes through. Valentina is a little bit further back. So, yeah, Mariano will fall into a gap, but has to now catch and overtake Ian on merit.
Sorry, Pete. Sorry to interrupt. As Mariano's coming out of the pits, I heard somebody go off the track there about where he's coming out of pit lane. I don't know if we can see that car on track.
I think Alex went off. Alex, yeah.
Yeah, Alex went off as looks like Mariano got through cleanly. Yeah, Alex was going off as Mariano was exiting the pits. Another heart-stopping moment for Mariano. Sorry, go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, no worries. I think this is an interesting strategy for Mariano. Normally we see him going very late. He had the lead of the race, and normally when he has the lead of the race, he stays out as long as he can. So unless he's decided to go for an alternate strategy today and short fuel, maybe, we'll find out what work went on in that car to after the pit stop, because now it's advantage Andy. You have to say it.
Yeah, I think so. Now is more important than it ever has been for Andy to be consistent, put in your really, really high quality laps without making any mistakes. We know he hasn't been quite as good at that as Mariano has. But at the same time, Andy was able to negotiate the back markers without any trouble. Mariano had some trouble there through no fault of his own, of course. Mariano now he doesn't have to catch. He'll expect Ian to make a pit stop at some point, but it would behoove him to catch Ian. And now Andy's in the catbird seat. Andy has clear air in front. His gap over Ian is growing. It was 8.5 seconds a couple laps ago. Now it's up to 10. So, yeah, Andy in a strong position here. But we know that Mariano's quicker than anybody else in the race. He's not going to go away. So we have a race that will unfold in the coming laps. Hard to say yet what will happen.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens as well, because yes, that gap is incrementally going up and up and up. We wanted a fight for the lead in a Wayports race again, and we have one. It is Andy who is in the advantageous position of having track position. He has not pitted. Mariano still has to navigate a back marker. Andy only has to drive his own race, navigate his own, not a back marker, sorry. Ian is actually for position, so that was a bit of a discredit to Ian. Nope. Mariano has to catch and overtake Ian on merit if he wants to beat Andy here. Of course, Travis, it could be a case that Ian pits out of the way of Mariano, and that never happens. But, what was Mariano's tactic as Andy peels into the pit? So we're going to have this lead battle earlier than both of us thought.
Yeah, this will be a bit frustrating for Andy because he chose to peel off into the pits here, but he's going to be right behind Eduardo. We know Andy can sail it into the pits pretty quickly and get in and out without wasting any time as he catches up Eduardo.
Drive-through penalty for Andy.
Oh, no. Yeah.
That
we
was
talked about
too fast, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about the small mistakes. Another small mistake. He missed the pit box when he tried to stop the first time. I think he was trying to get Eduardo on the way in because he knew Eduardo would be a little bit slow into pit lane, and just went way too quick. 10 kilometers quick is what we hear. So that's barring another mishap for Mariano. Oh no! Is that Mariano getting into Andy, or is that Santiago?
Yeah, that's Mariano. Andy had a very quick pit stop. Even though he botched the pit stop and got a drive-through, he managed to be out in ahead of Mariano. So, it just begs the question: if Andy had just slowed down to the pit speed limiter, we would have had a legitimate fight for the win here. As it happens, Andy needs to do something godlike in order to open the gap up, and I don't think it's realistic. He's got to open up the length of the time it takes for him to drive into the pit lane, cruise down the pit lane at 80 kilometers an hour, and get out the pit lane. I don't think that's going to happen unless Mariano makes a mistake. But really interesting stuff here.
Yeah, it is. That was, he was so slow into the pits and made so many mistakes. I was surprised to see him come out right there in front of Mariano. But imagine if he had gotten slowed down in time and then made his pit box, he would be 2 or 3 seconds clear of Mariano there in the lead. So he had done what he needed to do, running quickly at the front in clean air, and then just more of these small mistakes have piled up. We see him. No, he hasn't peeled off yet. That's Ian peeling off to go to the pits. So Ian didn't have a big enough lead that he will be able to resume the race in the lead. He'll come out in third position with Andy and Mariano fighting. But Ian back on for a second position finish with Andy's penalty.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. I was going to mention that as well. I think, Andy, the reason Andy came out so far alongside Mariano, Travis, is because he went into the pit lane at 60 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour or so over the limit. So that's why, his pit entry was just so much faster. He was slightly ahead on pace on his in-lap, so, don't want to take all of the credit away. But yeah, he's got to make over a second a lap now in order to open that gap enough so that when he serves his penalty, he comes out somewhere near Mariano. It's unlikely. So, yep, maybe Ian is the surprise of the day again.
Yeah, he might be, as we see Valentina in and out of the pits. She should rejoin in fourth position ahead of Santiago, who's pretty far back. I think we were following Andy, and it looked like he grew the gap a little bit. He's weaving on the back straight, trying to break the slipstream from Mariano, but I don't know that Mariano's close enough. So Andy gapping Mariano a little bit, but it's not a second a lap. That won't be enough. He needs to find more, but I am skeptical that he has it. Though, we've seen moments of greater brilliance from drivers before, so maybe he has something in the tank that we haven't seen before. Right now, it is a race. These two running line astern up the hill and across the line to start the 16th lap, though Andy still needs to serve that penalty. Ian not too far behind, about 13 seconds back of Mariano. That gap growing ever so slightly, but not enough as we're looking at Eduardo here. Nothing out of sorts on this car. Everything seems okay there. Just looking through the order now, here's Arthur in 7th position. He has reset that car at least once because we saw it go by banged up earlier.
Yeah, this is one banged up car as well. Alex for Step Up's got a lot of left front damage on that car. And yes, you're right. We do have a race on at the moment, but it is a little bit, what's the word? It's just for our viewing pleasure. It's not actually going to turn into a battle for the lead unless Mariano put on his unlucky racing overalls this morning. He's already come into some contact with Alex. Hopefully that's his glitch for the race and he doesn't have any more issues. Because, yeah, he just needs to sit behind Andy and wait for him to peel into the pit lane to serve his penalty. And it will be another first-place trophy for Mariano's trophy cabinet if that happens.
Yep, it will be. Though I don't know that Andy's out of it yet. Like, he's growing the gap just a little bit. It could be that Mariano is just running just running around behind Andy and not really pushing it very hard. But it looked like, it's a car. I thought I heard a car going off in front of Andy there, but everything looking okay. Not sure what the noises were from the cars. That was a bit odd. Yeah, Andy keeping this gap steady to Mariano. I suspect Mariano is just running around with, Andy being the rabbit in front of him, just chasing him around the circuit, not pushing very hard. Though when they came through the last turn onto the back straight, I noticed Mariano, the rear of the car sliding around a lot, which you don't want to do on, one of those really important corners onto a long straight, because that's where you make all of the time on this circuit, is carrying speed out of that corner and taking all of that speed with you down that very long back straight, almost a mile long, or a little more than a mile long, if I recall correctly. So, yeah, Andy may have something for Mariano here. It doesn't look like it's enough yet, but still quite a few laps remaining. Hopefully Andy can put something together. He'll have his fingers crossed for a bit of bad luck for Mariano, though, because he's not going to do it at this rate all by himself.
Yeah, we have a nice fight on our hands. This is a good opportunity to see where each of the drivers are gaining and losing time on one another, because it's always interesting to compare driving styles. We've done it a lot throughout Wayports, and it's interesting to see that even though they're pretty close on lap times, Mariano with obviously the advantage ultimately today so far, they have seriously different driving styles. As Andy gets it all wrong, hits the sausage curb, this is going to give Mariano a legitimate opportunity to go for a move, even though he doesn't need to. Sits in behind for now. But yeah, these two very different driving styles, very similar lap times.
Yep, Mariano all over the horn and the flashlights right now. He doesn't need to take that position. He had an opportunity there, but he can afford to hang back and avoid trouble. Probably a little bit frustrated with Andy, who has been off and back on a few times. When Andy left the pits, he gave Mariano the squeeze into the grass on the way up the hill after the next corner, as we see a back marker ahead of these two. Andy, I think, will relish this opportunity to put Arthur between them. Mariano, nope. That's done. Arthur drives off the road ahead of them, gets well out of the way. So no back marker assistance for Andy. Mariano tucks in behind him, about 4/10 behind. He's closed that gap on account of Andy's mistake through the chicane on the last lap. As Andy gets this corner wrong too, the Mariano goes a little bit wide. I think Mariano's going to try to take this position, even though he doesn't really need to. Andy gives him the squeeze, going to go around the back marker on the outside, but I doubt Alex sees them. Oh no, Alex goes wide onto the curb, taking the racing line. Andy probably should have known that he was going to be there. He wouldn't have been able to see him with Mariano right there on the inside. Another mistake from Andy, getting impatient. He had to get as far away in the lead as he possibly could. Still had Mariano breathing down his neck, but gets it a little bit wrong, collides with the back marker, and Mariano off in the lead once again. I think this will do it for Mariano. Andy now behind in second position. Mariano ahead on the road, and Andy still has to serve this penalty. It is a reprise of the Mariano show in P1.
Yeah, and don't discount Ian. Definitely do not discount Ian for P2. He's 15 seconds behind the lead, so 13 or 12 seconds behind Andy right now. So when Andy comes in, it's going to be Andy coming out in P3 at this rate, Travis.
Yep, I think you're right. Ian's running consistently in third position. He had the one mistake at the very beginning of the race, but otherwise has been pretty solid. He's not running the quickest laps, but he is running consistent laps. He is coming up on a back marker that's in the grass through the gravel in turn one. Looks like Arthur, but I think Ian will be able to. Yeah, so Arthur's back on the road without running into Ian. Ian should have clear sight of him coming up the hill here and then down again through the back part of the circuit. Arthur should be able to see him pretty easily. Just drives off in the grass, hard on the brakes. Ian, I think, will be pleased with that. One thing we have talked about in the past, Pete, as it relates to Ian's driving, is he is kind of famously hard on front tires. And today, that is not so. I would hazard a guess that his uptick in pace is a consequence of him adjusting his driving style a little bit, because we're used to seeing him work the steering wheel really hard, putting on lots of steering lock to get the car around the corner and really lighting up those front tires. I've been following him for the last 5 or 6 laps, and they have been solidly in the green. So I think he's made some positive adjustments, taken better care of the equipment, found a little bit of pace on as a result of that. And here we see him running around in third, and what will become second, we believe, when Andy comes in to serve his penalty.
Yeah, Andy's put in a good lap to stick with Mariano here, and that gap is creeping up. And we do have a lot of laps left in this race. We have 8 laps left to go now. So Ian really needs to just put in those consistent lap times and make no errors. I think, Travis, Andy's going to lose upwards of 15, nearly 20 seconds when he drives through the pits.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much time it is when they come through. Without stopping. So stopping to take fuel, if they take fuel, takes a second or two because they don't need that much fuel. But just stopping in the box and going again costs a couple seconds. Andy obviously will be able to drive straight through pit lane, so I would guess it is about as much as the gap they have right now. It's also worth noting that it's a little bit faster to go. The pit lane is a bit shorter than the rest of the circuit. You can carry more speed around the final corner and into pit lane because the track's really wide right there. It opens up the road a little bit, so you can go pretty fast into pit lane. And then the exit of pit lane is quite a bit shorter than the first turn. So the first turn is that that sweeping left-hand bend downhill before you turn right to go under the bridge. The pit lane exit cuts all of that off. So it might be deceptively quick to come out of the pits, especially going this direction. But we'll just have to wait and see. Ian carves off 2 seconds that lap. Andy must have gotten something horribly wrong, probably in the chicane again. This is looking really, really good for Andy and really frustrating for. This is looking really good for Ian and awfully frustrating for Andy.
Yeah, it's looking fantastic. He's got 14.7 seconds, the deficit, and he's yet to come in the pit lane. So, yeah, let's see what happens here. Andy's still going. Yeah, he's still going.
Yeah, the next time we come by, maybe we can watch Ian on board when he comes through the chicane in the final corner, because on the previous lap, he took just a marvelous line through the chicane and then a nice sweeping entry into the final corner. Ian has definitely corrected his driving style. Well, I shouldn't say corrected. He certainly wasn't doing badly before, but he has made adjustments to his driving style to use the equipment a little bit better and go a little bit faster. As we look at that's Santiago getting it all wrong coming into the gravel there. He's going to come back across the road right in front of this back marker. That's a little bit frightening. Mariano knows what that looks like.
Yeah, the reason we were focused on this battle is because it was a battle for position between Santiago and Valentina, but Santiago more interested in playing in the sand than mounting a charge on Valentina, so he needs to regroup because Santiago could take back P4, and that is important for the team's championship. As we've got another incident at turn 1 with Alex almost collecting Valentina. We just caught it on the edge of shot there. Alex needs to repair that car, I think, and that's going to be another big incident into the wall. Alex's day is not going very well.
No, Alex is really struggling, and it is, Alex has only done a few races, a handful of laps, so it can be difficult without, all the sensory input that you would get in a real car to adjust to sim racing and really feel the car working. And then on top of that, some days you have good days and some days you have bad days. So, doing something unfamiliar like this and then just having a rough day can be pretty frustrating.
Ian's gap to the leader has increased, and so has his gap to Andy by another second. So if Andy keeps doing these laps, maybe he'll secure P2, which is incredibly lucky given the amount of stuff that's gone on at the front. Ian will probably look back at this and kick himself slightly, but he's driving to his own pace, and who knows what can happen. Anything can happen, as we keep saying, and there's a few laps to go yet, so anything is possible. Let's see, when will Andy serve that drive-through?
Well, he doesn't have much time left. He's got 6 laps, so there'll be 5 laps remaining when he comes across the line. So he needs to get it done soon, and I think it would be wise for him to get it done so that if he has to race Ian, he has some time to do it. The gap had come down to about 12 seconds. I think Andy had made a mistake ahead of Ian. Now it's back up to 15, so I think Ian then, on the following lap, Ian made a mistake behind Andy. Andy goes through this turn one more time. He'll have 5 laps when he comes across the line to serve this penalty. I feel like he wants to get this done as soon as possible to leave himself a bit of time to fight if he needs to, but He's going to continue trying to run as quickly as he can around the front. Behind him, we can see Ian is working really hard, trying to close that gap, and just he hasn't gone off anywhere. Now he's just, I think he's overdriving the car, trying to close that gap, and has not realized that it's actually costing him pace. A few laps ago, he was driving this really beautiful line, nice flowing line through the chicane and then into the final corner, and now he's carrying a little too much speed in, working the front tires, as hard as we're accustomed to seeing him doing. He needs to settle down a little bit, slow down to go fast. We say. But it looks like Andy may have the gap in hand now to get ahead of Ian when he comes out of the pits, but it'll still be pretty tight.
Yeah, this is the story now. Who will get P2 in this race? We know who's getting P1, bar any errors. It's Mariano again, driving a stellar drive and showing everyone how it's done once again. Yeah, but can Andy keep putting in these lap times that he needs in order to keep that gap to Ian longer than his trip down the pit lane? I think he's going to manage it, Travis. I think he's just going to manage it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It'll be quite close. We look back now to Santiago, who is catching up to Valentina. Santiago's car looks like a bit of a handful. It was kind of crabbing coming up the hill. You can see the bodywork on all four corners is bent out of shape. Valentina has been running right here in fourth position for a long time. Santiago has come and gone many times from third, fourth, fifth position. I think he can probably challenge Valentina on pace, but Valentina certainly has been more consistent than Santiago.
Yeah, and here is the move. Valentina goes wide into the grass, and that will be job done. Will it? Oh, as the back marker, oh my goodness me! So the back marker there, not really at fault. It was Valentina rejoining who kind of slapped across the nose of Alex and then into Santiago. So again, 3 coming into 1 just doesn't go, and that was a shocker for all 3 of those guys. And Santiago, Valentina, both resetting their cars. So it's, actually, Valentina hasn't reset the car, and there's some rear end damage there, Travis. But crazy scenes down at the end of the back straight.
Yeah, and that's the right rear that's bent in on Santiago's car. So I think he may have a bit of a surprise when he comes into the chicane. Actually, yeah, he has repaired. Yeah, Valentina did not repair. Santiago did repair. My mistake. Sorry about that. The damage on Valentina's car is on the left rear, so this won't compromise her as badly, though she definitely, I think she'll be wishing she had reset after she does a few more laps, because it's going to be very difficult to get around the first corner here. Yeah, Alex just really unfortunate there. Caught in an Alex sandwich with Valentina rejoining and Santiago trying to take advantage of Alex's presence there on the road to get well clear of Valentina, and it went wrong for all 3 of them. Valentina driving very gingerly around the corner. You can see the right front tire lifting off the surface as it leans on that bent left rear. Santiago going to follow her through this corner. This will be especially tricky for Valentina going down the hill as they come over the crest here, because it's a right-hand corner with a nasty curb and some tires on the inside. To say nothing of the back marker she has to negotiate. Valentina gets it down to the tire. Santiago going to cut through, and now, punts Alex in the rear. The 3 of these running line astern. Valentina's not going to give up. She's going to have a look down the inside here. Oh, no, he gets into Santiago's quarter panel, insults him by punting the front of the car off the road. Unbelievable. Yeah, Santiago gets away with it remarkably, but she's in the middle of the road there in front of one of the Quantum cars. And now in front of her teammate, Mariano. Mariano came around the corner, just avoided Valentina, gets to the inside of the course. This is what Andy needs. Mariano now has to negotiate all of these back markers as he narrowly avoids his teammate. Valentina moves off to the side of the circuit. I expect she'll be letting Andy through here. This suddenly became very exciting with 3 laps remaining, Pete.
Yeah, Andy needs to pit now. He doesn't want to get caught up with these back markers at all. He needs to pit now, this lap. Otherwise, this is the end of his chances at P2, and Mariano will just walk away with more points. Let's see, will Andy come into the pit lane? He cannot afford to stay out any longer, in my opinion, and he's committed to the final corner, is he? No, he's going into the pits. Good choice, Andy. Yeah, let's see. Where will he come out as Alex and Valentina there tangling once again? The final corner. Let's see where Ian is coming around through the chicane.
Yeah, he's coming into the final corner now. I think you're right, Pete, that this is... Oh, he gets the final corner just a little bit wrong. I think you're right that this is Andy's only chance now, and he should come out well ahead
I
of
think
Ian.
he's done it.
Going to be...
Yeah,
he has done it. He'll get through easily. Coming down the hill out of the pits now. Yeah, Ian needed to find some more time and avoid mistakes, but he couldn't do it. Andy will come out well clear of Ian in second position. But this is exactly what you said it as we were watching Andy come into pit lane, Pete, that his only chance is to get away from all of these back markers, to give himself some clean air, and just hope that Mariano runs into trouble. Mariano could afford to follow all of these guys around with only 2 laps remaining. Andy's 11 seconds back, but anything can happen. Many things have happened. As he's coming up on these back markers, we can hear him lean out of the throttle as he decides what the cars ahead of him are going to do. These are sketchy moments for Mariano, but Andy will be relishing this.
Threads the needle through the middle, very nice. It's as if the seas parted there for Mariano. And it does look very much like a McLean Library win is on the ticket once again. Andy and Santiago for Vertex have had a pretty interesting race, is the word I'm going to choose there. Plenty of drama for both. Andy botching it himself in his pit stop, unfortunately. Santiago having numerous incidents that a little bit uncharacteristic of late for Santiago, it has to be said.
Yeah, rough day for him. We've seen him run a lot cleaner than he has. It is kind of a tricky circuit, but it's not. Yeah, it's not that tricky. I think it seems like he's just having kind of a bad day. Maybe didn't practice as much as he might have, or as he had around Cadet. He did so well around the Aston Cadet circuit when he won, and the Aston Cadet circuit is, though it's short, is notably like more difficult. It's got the the fast downhill section that we call Eau Rouge, and some weird off camber corners. He did so well there, but obviously struggling today. I think he'll be happy to have this one over with as he tries to negotiate the back marker hard on the brakes in the middle of the road. Santiago will be thrilled to see final lap and get this one done.
Yeah, we're on to the final lap. We're well into the final lap now. We're just watching Santiago negotiate a few back markers. But here we are, Mariano with Andy. No, that's Santiago in the background there. Andy slightly further back. Coming up the back straight, Travis, to round the final complex of corners to take yet another win. And what a win it was. It all went his way. And an unforced error by Andy pretty much sealed the fate of this one.
Yep, it did. Mariano, it nearly went wrong for Mariano. The race was gifted back to Andy when Mariano collided with the back marker. But one crucial mistake from Andy, going too quickly into pit lane, picking up a drive-through penalty, robbed us of an exciting race to the finish. But as we look under the gantry here, Mariano is going to come across the line, flashing the lights to finish first yet again. Will further extend his championship lead as he goes down the hill. We'll watch Andy come across the line to take P2, and not too far behind, just behind these back markers, Santiago and Valentina finishing their races. Eduardo coming behind them. We see Ian in the background, who will come across to take a second consecutive podium finish. Pete, I think he'll have wanted second place, but he should be pretty happy with third, recovering from a pretty bad mistake at the very beginning of the race.
Yeah, this was another masterclass from Mariano, but yes, Ian certainly kicking himself. Andy, well, he can breathe a sigh of relief. He got away again, really, with a little bit of luck. Santiago absolutely probably livid with himself, frankly, with that performance. I think, yeah, good for him to get ahead of Valentina. Again, Valentina, not sure how she'll feel about her result, but all these drivers are putting on a show for us, so we should be grateful to see them out there having fun and improving themselves as drivers and sim racers. So good to see everybody out there today.
Still waiting for a couple cars to cross the line. Should be Arthur in seventh position when he comes back around, and then Alex will be the 8th place finisher. They must have been, I think they were just ahead of Mariano on the road when he started his final lap. We can see a car coming around the final corner now. This is Arthur coming through to take 7th position, and Alex may have gone to pits. We'll see. But there's Arthur There's Arthur finishing 7th. Alex already went through, credited with 8th position. And there we have it, Pete. Mariano at the top, as we've been talking about. Andy in 2nd, and rounding out the podium, Ian in 3rd.
Yes, so here are the race results then for round number 8 of Season 3 in Division 1 of Wayports Racing League at Blackwood Grand Prix Reversed. Mariano in 44 minutes and 32 seconds takes the gold medal, the top step of the podium, ahead of Andy by 12 seconds in the end, which is actually fairly remarkable with everything that went wrong in Andy's race, Travis.
Yeah, trials and tribulations are how I would summarize his race. It went bad to worse to a pretty good recovery. So I think once again he'll be frustrated for not finishing further up the order, but I think he'll be pretty happy that he was able to recover as well as he did.
Yeah, let's not ignore the fact that Mariano had problems of his own. Certainly, he got caught up with some back markers, and that brought Andy right back into the mix. And then Andy himself, after rejoining, caused a bit of a headache too with him. So such is that. Ian takes a very well-deserved 2nd consecutive podium finish, as Travis alluded to a moment ago. And then it's Santiago, who we've been very familiar with seeing up at the top of the order. P4, a lap down. Again, that's fairly unusual, isn't it, really? Valentina, P5. Eduardo, P6. Arthur and Alex, who provided us with much entertainment and silliness, in P7 and 8. We are going to take a very quick break to get ready for some interviews here, and please don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a second. Hello and welcome back to Wayports Racing League Season 3 Division 1. The results were as follows. Mariano took the win in 44 minutes ahead of Andy for Vertex, then Ian for Lilium rounding out the podium. Santiago, Valentina, Eduardo, Arthur and Alex not quite up to the mark today. They finished off the podium a lap at least down. Travis, we're about ready for some interviews. Let's have a word with Mariano, shall we?
Let's do.
Mariano, welcome to the commentary booth once again, and with a gold medal around your neck. How do you feel?
Hey, that was great. I'm glad that was the outcome, because I was quite annoyed, to be honest, at several different things in that race. That was not a steady race.
Yep, that is one way of putting it. We had our head in our hands a couple of times throughout the field today. Just a few backmarker troubles and some other weirdness happening, and then Andy getting that drive through. Oh man, that was unbelievable. Funnily enough, for your information, Andy's trip through the pit lane was probably slightly longer than your victory over him. So if he hadn't have had that drive through, it would have been very close. So we were denied that race at the end. But you must be happy taking another win.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, that gap I built, eroded with back marker being that was really difficult, and that was really upsetting. But then I think that was one of the dirtiest races I've ever had with Andy. I didn't understand. I was quite upset because he's coming out of the pits, and he basically pushed me off the track twice, and he had that penalty to serve. So I don't know what he was trying to do there. I'm gonna have a word with him after, but yeah, that really upset me.
Well, plenty of head scratching will be going on after this round, I'm sure. For us as well in the commentary box. So there we go, everybody with an itchy head today. Looking forward to the final 2 rounds. This is a great news for McLean Library and a great news for yourself in the Drivers' Championship. Yeah,
this is awesome. I mean, this puts me really close also to take that title, and that's it's a great step to take. Unfortunately, it was a little more dicey than I would have liked, but I'm really happy for me and for the team for sure.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Travis, any questions for Mariano?
No, I just was going to echo the sentiment about it being a bit of a head scratcher for a lot of the race, and then note that negotiating back markers has become a bit of a theme. You had that heart-stopping moment with Alex in turn 1. I know you talked with him in the past. Are you going to have another chat with him today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to spending more time on the track. You explain the fundamentals, and then if a new driver doesn't put in the time, then this will keep happening. So it's just, I guess the chat now becomes more about whether he has the desire to go on, or if he's going to continue like this. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. We hope to see him back, and potentially just with a little bit more awareness of the race and what's happening. So let's not dwell on that. Let's have a chat with Andy as well, if you don't mind. Andy is in the commentary box with us. Andy, P2 today. What can we say? That drive-through penalty, I think that was the story of your race, and if you hadn't have had it, it would have been a close one.
Yeah, okay. I got this penalty because I was too much on fire on that thing, and it was absolutely okay. And it wouldn't be okay if I would have won this race, because I didn't have just the pace today, and of course the consistency. So it's absolutely okay that Mariano won that race. It would be a steal, to be honest. Yeah. And of course I gave it away by myself. But yeah, I was here for the action and not for the results, so everything is fine. I think there was a lot of action with Ian and some nice fights with Mariano. In the end, he won, and that's great for him and for the McLean library. Also, the result with Santiago and me still keeps it very, very exciting in the championship, I think. Not the Drivers' Championship, that's done, but maybe the Team Championship.
Yeah, the Teams Championship is definitely the talking point now. Andy, what are you going to say to Santiago about this? Because it was quite close in the end between Santiago and Valentina, and Santiago has to finish ahead of Valentina for the final 2 rounds to secure that victory for your team.
Yeah, as I said before, it's all about the fun and the action and the result. Okay, it would be nice to have one more title for Vertex this time, but if not, it's just important that we have action and Santiago has fun. I would never force him to do some practice or anything like that. He's just like me, having fun here. Second place will be fine.
Yeah, fair enough. So you're here to enjoy it. That's great.
Sorry, Pete. We talked to Mariano a moment ago, and he expressed a little bit of frustration about the two of you colliding a few times, banging wheels a little bit when you were coming out of the pits. Just curious what your view is.
Yeah, of course. When two people collide, it can be the mistake of one, of course. Yeah, both can take a bit more care. That's the other point. And maybe even if it was my mistake making a defending move on that, well, if he had second place, I'd understand him to complain. But well, I will never complain when I win a race.
Fair enough. Well, thanks very much. Yeah, so two rounds to go. Let's have a chat with Ian very quickly. Thank you, Andy and Mariano. Ian, a return trip to the podium, 3rd place.
Thank you.
Yeah. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, pretty cool indeed. What do you make of that race? It was interesting. I don't know if you were keeping an eye on what Andy was doing and when he was going to pit, but yeah, Andy left it quite late to pit.
Yeah, definitely. I was always looking into the minimap, trying to do my best to cut some seconds out of that advantage that I had over me. But at the end of the race, I did a few mistakes while I was looking at the minimap, trying to sort it out when he was speeding. And anyways, it's a good result. Only 12 seconds away from him and 20 something away from Mariano. Is like I'm shortening that gap that they have.
It looked like you were quite a bit more comfortable out there today than you have been in the past. One of our talking points at earlier events has been how you're kind of hard on front tires, and today we noticed that it looked like you opened up the steering a little bit. You were more smooth. You weren't using the tires as much, and then it kind of got away from you at the end of the race. So it seemed like you had done more practice and found the rhythm in the middle of the race, and then trying to chase down Andy toward the end. you overdrove a little bit. Would you say that's accurate or no?
Yep, yeah. I definitely did some more practice in this track, and that's something that I noticed during the practice is that I was sliding a lot and using the front tires a lot. So I try to control a little bit more the car in the exits, because I was trying to do like the moves really mechanic, like try to repeat the moves every single time. But at this time around, I decided to, I don't know, try to understand where I'm at the turn and try to move differently according to my position in the turn, how I'm positioned in there. So yeah, that's definitely helped me to get some lower lap times, and yeah, that's something that I kind of understood for this race, how to do it.
Nice. Well, nicely done to you. It showed in your pace on track and just following you around. So practice is paying off.
Yeah, for sure, it is.
Well, hope to see you, all three of you, battling it out for the final 2 rounds of the season. Travis, we made it to the end of this broadcast. It was tricky on all sides, but there we are. We are here, and that is it. That is a wrap for round 8 of the championship. Let's take a look forward to what's coming up in the future rounds of the championship. We only have 2 to go, and yeah, they look as follows. We have on our radar round 9 at Fernbay Gold. This is popular with the drivers, really popular. So this should be exciting. Fernbay Gold reverse, Travis.
Yeah, Fernbay Gold reversed is it is a bit tricky. The theme around any of the Fernbay configurations is scary curbs, and no less so at Fernbay Gold, especially going the opposite direction. A really fun circuit, especially in these cars. I think we'll have a good time watching that. Or I should say, you will have a good time watching that. I will be absent next week, so I will catch the replay and see how it turns out.
Yeah, you are doing your own racing next week. We wish you luck with that, and hope to see you back for the finale at Kyoto Ring National Reversed for round 10 on October 2nd. So from all of us here, to all of you, have a great day and see you next time.